So the Indianapolis Colts were hoping that a couple of big notable moves were going to help them take a big step forward in the 2020 season. First, obviously, was the signing of Phillip Rivers after all of those years, 16 seasons in total with the Chargers. He comes to Indianapolis for kind of the swan song of his career, and the Colts hoping that he was going to represent a sizable, significant upgrade at the quarterback position, be a leader for the team, etc. And then the Colts went out in the offseason and traded away their first-round pick to bring in an impact difference maker on the defensive front in the type of DeForest Buckner, getting him away from the defending NFC champion San Francisco 49ers. So you could clearly see kind of the logic here for the Colts in the offseason was, we don't need a ton of guys. We need difference makers. We need key, notable guys at key, notable spots that will hopefully help make the difference and help this team turn a corner. Well, it certainly didn't look that way in week one with the loss that they had to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And when you think about that, it was the only win the Jags had the entire season. But even more than that, you really look and you can see that a loss was kind of costly in a way. Because this is a team where you look at them, they lost to the Jags, but their other losses were to the Browns, playoff team, Titans, playoff team, AFC South champions, even though they had the same record, the Baltimore Ravens, playoff team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, playoff team. So they went 11-5. 4 of those losses you would count as quality losses against really quality opponents, playoff teams. But imagine if they went 12-4. Let's say they beat the Jags and still lost those other 4 teams. They would have won the division. That would have given them a home playoff game, and who knows what the heck happens. Instead, it came down to week 17 for this team to even make the playoffs. That's crazy. They finished 11-5 just to be the 7th seed. Like, it kind of speaks to how it was in the AFC, like very, very top heavy. To have a 7th seed added and to have that 7th seed go 11-5 in order to get in, that's just craziness. So if you're the Colts, you're looking at it and say, you know what, the moves that we made paid off. We improved as a team, won more games, made it to the playoffs. And ultimately, it wasn't enough. They lost to the Buffalo Bills on the road in the wild card round. And you could talk about what happened or what led to that and the performance in that game. But I always come back to this, like, when you think about losses and whether they matter, really they don't, you can say, well, one loss, should it make or break a season? Yeah, I agree fundamentally it shouldn't. But what happens if the Colts beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 1? And they go 12-4, and they get a home playoff game in the first round? Like, do they win in the opening round at least? Maybe, maybe not. It just speaks to the value in the NFL of every game truly matters. Whereas other sports like baseball, you lose 1 in a 162-game season, you really don't feel that bad about it. In the NBA, when it's actually a full season, you lose 1 game out of 82. You don't usually feel that bad about it. Similar with hockey, but when it comes to football, since you have so few games, like every game you can argue absolutely matters. So it was a season with some progress and growth for the Colts, but how much did it really matter in the grand scheme of things? Because Phillip Rivers was good, not great. He did throw for 4,100 yards, but you could clearly tell as the season went along that he was pretty close to done. He would have some good moments, but he had some really bad moments, and especially when things would break down around him and you got him off of his throwing platform at all. Like, you could tell that the arm just wasn't there anymore. The talent that was there for so many years just wasn't. Offensively, second-round pick Jonathan Taylor really came to life after kind of a sluggish start to the season, came to life in the second half of the year, finished with over 1,100 yards. And they had some good games offensively. They had 8 games where they scored 28 or more points. Defensively, this was a top-flight unit in the league all year. They were second against the run and 8th overall in total yards allowed per game. So you think the trade for a guy like a DeForest Buckner certainly had an impact, and it most certainly did. He had a typical stud type of year for him. So when you're thinking about, is it worth trading the 13th overall pick to bring in a defensive lineman that you're then going to have to give a big contract to? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you'd rather draft a defensive tackle like the 49ers did when they took Kinlaw with that 13th pick. But then you could also say, this guy's a sure thing. The Colts had a ton of salary cap space. That's all they had to give up to get a certified stud. It's worth it. And I would agree with that assessment. Like, if you're a Colts fan, I can't imagine you have any objections now to the DeForest Buckner trade, and you probably didn't before that. Darius Leonard had another great Pro Bowl, All-Pro type of season. So you look at the Colts and you say defensively that they've got two studs, like two real hosses, that you can build that defense around and have it be a top-flight elite unit in the next couple of seasons. But you look at that offense and you say, offensively, now Phillip Rivers has announced his retirement after one season with the team, so you feel like you're basically back to square one again in terms of the quarterback situation. Ever since Andrew Luck's retirement, you haven't found that replacement. You haven't found that dude, and you're going into this offseason having to try and find that dude. Then you have left tackle, I believe Anthony Costanzo, also retired. So you talk about a guy that's been an anchor on that offensive line for years, is no longer in the fold. Offensive coordinator Nick Sirianni leaves to go to Philadelphia to take the Eagles head coaching job. So an offense that already had some questions has even more questions going into this offseason. So it's kind of rough for them. The good thing for the Colts is, one thing I would give Chris Ballard, general manager, a ton of credit for, is the Colts always seem every year to have a ton of salary cap space. And in this case, I think they've got like 75, 80, maybe even a little more $1 million available in cap space. So if they want to spend money and they want to make big moves, they can certainly do that. However, I want to call out, part of the reason they have that cap space is because they don't have a quarterback. Phillip Rivers is retired. Andrew Luck previously retired a couple years back. Like, that's all fine and good to have that cap space, but when you look at the Colts, it's one of these situations of, yeah, they've got some nice talent and they play well. I think they've got a decent coach. Like, they're a good team, but they're not a great team. And until they get a quarterback, they won't be a great team. So you can have all the cap space until kingdom frickin' come. If you don't find the right dude to be that dude on the offense, it's not going to matter. It just isn't. And when you look at them in terms of free agency, you got free agents like Jacoby Brissett. Like, are you going to bring him back in the fold? T.Y. Hilton, after almost a decade in Indianapolis, is it time for him to move on? Justin Houston, Danico Autry, Malik Hooker, former first-round pick, Xavier Rhodes, who had a kind of resurgent year for the Colts in 2020. So the good thing for the Colts with that cap space is they can choose to invest in whoever they want to and keep them. You know, maybe they'll sit there and give a big contract to a Quentin Nelson because, God damn, he's already 3 years into his career. That's crazy to think about. Anyways, but when you look at this team, number one goal of the program in the offseason is you have to find a quarterback. And for those that'll talk about in the past where I've said, I didn't want Chris Ballard to be the Bears general manager, be careful what you wish for because now you got Ryan Pace. It's a valid criticism until you ask yourself, what the hell has Chris Ballard really done? Like, a lot of the peripherals look great, but the bottom line, nuts and bolts results, what exactly are we talking about here? How many playoff games has he won? How many Super Bowl appearances has he made? You know, he inherited Andrew Luck. Fortunate, you know, good thing. Then Andrew Luck's not there, and now he's spinning his wheels and trying to figure out what to do with the quarterback spot. What's the difference? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So, you know, you've heard rumors. As of the time of this recording, I don't know what's going to ultimately happen, but there's been thrown into the Carson Wentz sweepstakes. Maybe they would be a team that would pursue a Derek Carr, although it seems like Carson Wentz is the guy that they're pursuing. You know, you can't envision if Deshaun Watson actually was on the trade market that Indianapolis would have any shot, because why in the hell would the Texans, as incompetent as they are, trade Deshaun Watson within their own division to make somebody else a championship contender so that way they could get that reminder for the next 10 to 15 years? Seems pretty stupid. But maybe they take a flyer on trading for a guy like Sam Darnold. Like, who knows? But number one goal of the program for the Colts in the offseason, unless you can coax Andrew Luck out of retirement and get him to stay, or you can count on him for a few years, you have to get a quarterback. You just have to. Because until you do, none of this other shit matters. Sure, you have other needs. You know, Costanzo's retirement obviously creates a need at offensive tackle, especially if you're going to keep Braden Smith on the right side. A wide receiver, you know, T.Y. Hilton's probably at the end of his rope. And so even if you do bring him back, you want to get a speed option that can work opposite of Michael Pittman Jr. And you still got some needs, I think, on the defensive side of the ball, specifically in the secondary. Are you really, even if you bring back Xavier Rhodes, like he had a good year in 2020, are you going to count on him doing it again in 2021? But again, it doesn't matter. You could get all of these other things, but if you're playing a scrub at quarterback or you're playing some journeyman at quarterback, this Colts team is just going to be an exercise and a waste of time. And that's that simple. So if you're talking about a team that should be desperate for a quarterback, that should be looking to do whatever the hell they want to do to get one, the Colts sitting at that 21st overall pick, you know, I know you've seen some things probably indicating that Chris Ballard's not incredibly passionate about drafting a quarterback. Dude, if you don't think you're going to be able to get one of these other veterans, which I still think is dumb in and of itself, you're in a position you can get frisky. You can get aggressive. If you like one of these quarterbacks, you go up and get one of these damn quarterbacks and put this quarterback situation to rest, to bed, so you don't have to continue have it being the one thing that truly holds you back. Because until they do, the Colts will be no better than what they were this year.